Got a little place near the beach. We watch the sailboats out at sea.
Well. Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? Hope you all are having a great day. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk breaking gaming news, apparently, now.
Yeah.
It's like the
Breaking.
trend.
I get it.
Hey, you see what I did there? I am your host, Steven, aka Midnight Hatter, and joining me, as always, is fellow dad, Adam Blue. How are you doing?
That's right. Doing good. Just
represent.
being a dad, just wearing my cosplay.
Dad things. Right, that's like if I were gonna create a D&D character, I would not be a dad. I used to always like have these tragic backstories where it's like, oh, I lost my kid, in a scuffle, and like I'm trying to earn money back so that I can go. But now that I am a dad, it's like, well, I don't want to role play as that.
Yeah, it's that is kind of interesting because you always feel like your character needs some sort of backstory or something, but then like you'll relate it to real life and be like, oh, what if I lost my family? That would be sad.
Yeah,
But,
that would suck.
yeah.
But yeah, today we got a fun show. We're going to talk about a couple of different things. Obviously, there's gaming news that just dropped, and everyone's very excited about it. Adam, you posted a short earlier, which I really enjoyed. And if you guys haven't, obviously the full trailers have been spammed to death on both mine and Adam's Discords. So links down in the description if you want to go watch the trailers. But Gundam Breaker 4 is officially on the menu.
Yeah, it was funny because I got a heads up about a Gundam game potentially being announced. But it was funny how for the Nintendo Direct, they just posted the video. It wasn't live because I think it was supposed to happen earlier, but because of the Xbox podcast, it's interesting. I think what Nintendo was doing was, okay, they know that Microsoft is going to bring up other platforms, but not say them. Yeah. Microsoft never said PlayStation. They never said Nintendo.
No.
But we've got the announcement of a game on a Nintendo system from Microsoft. But anyway, so then I guess Nintendo decided to do the Direct today. So as soon as it landed, like at 8, I just scrubbed until I saw a Gundam, and then I just quickly made a video.
Perfect.
And in OBS, I have this thing. I don't know if it's native or it's a plugin where you can do vertical. And then so I just positioned it and then recorded. And
boom, ready to go. See, that's a professional content creator, people. These are tips from the which I think you still have that level in your Patreon, right? For content creation, consulting, and coaching. Yeah. So if you are interested in growing the way that Adam has grown, again, links down in the description to the Gundam Explained Patreon. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on Gundam Breaker 4, just because A, I think we're probably going to talk about it again tomorrow, and B, I really don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's just kind of a short trailer anyway. There's 3 things that I would note that are important to me, I would say. First is Unreal Engine. So it reflects that commitment that we've seen from Bandai Namco. They're going hard on Unreal Engine 5. And I think that that's a good thing for a variety of reasons. Already we know that Gundam Breaker 4 is going to be multi-platform. And as I mentioned when we were talking about like the Steam release for GBO 2 and, all of these new Gundam games that are coming out, as more Gundam games are produced in Unreal, you're going to have more experienced developers because Unreal Engine has a way of cultivating people through their freemium program. So you're going to have a lot more talent. The talent pool of developers is going to be larger. And then B, porting to other platforms is so much easier out of a system like Unreal or Unity. So
yeah, and that's what's interesting because they didn't say that this was coming to Xbox.
No.
Steam, PS4, PS5, and Switch, which is weird because SD Gundam Battle Alliance was on Xbox. So I don't know if that's being saved for something else. Like maybe Xbox wants to leverage that in terms of Japanese audience.
Sure.
Maybe it's a Game Pass game. So they let people know, hey, this is coming up. But hey, later on, Microsoft's like, hey, it's Game Pass.
Exactly.
I don't know. Another thing real quick to add about that Unreal Engine thing, that's the rumor is that's how Metroid Prime 4 is being developed because they've been hiring Unreal Engine people for retro studios. So that's interesting. Nintendo's going that direction. They, probably it's And yeah, the rumor is there's going to be two versions. There's a Switch version and a Switch 2 version.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that sort of cohesion around Unreal, which, say what you will about Epic, but I think Unreal Engine is awesome,
Yeah, it's funny. I see my son, my youngest, is crazy. He's doing this. He will use Unity and Unreal depending on what he wants to tinker with or make or play around, and it's just incredible to see like that they're different, but they're the same in a way. It's
Yeah,
I think what makes them both interesting to use is there's so many options to quickly get yourself up and running. You know,
exactly. And I mean, the support around both of them is incredible. Like, there's probably thousands of hours of YouTube content on developing for both
yeah.
platforms, so that's very cool.
But did you? I wanted to talk about Gun Breaker 4 real quick, just
Sure.
real quick.
Yeah.
Because it's like one of those things where like I'm super pumped and excited a new Gundam game is coming out. But from getting into Gundam, probably the least exciting games for me have been the breaker types because I'm a systems based gamer, a mechanics based gamer, and I've played Gundam Breaker 3 and New Gundam Breaker. They're not based around like learning specific mechanics to then manipulate the systems
Yeah.
that are in the game. It's really just, you know, a level of button mashing, even though you do need to know a degree of when to use what move just to collect parts because you're just grinding to collect parts. So,
Exactly.
like, as a video gamer, that's not a game for me. As a Gundam fan, I'll probably have it to have it and play it every once in a while. But the other part of this too is it seems like this game is really just marketed toward people that like Gunpla.
Yeah.
It's not marketed to people that are gamers, and I think that's a mistake. But but maybe that's where the budget comes in. Maybe this is a Gunpla commercial.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 60-hour Gunpla commercial.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think I've talked about how I got to the point in Gundam Breaker 3 where I just had, Kshatriya wings, Zazabi funnels, and then
Oh,
like a Cubile backpack, and it was just like funnel like I never even had to touch any of the attack buttons. It was just funnels were all over the screen, dominating everything, which got me thinking, I was talking to Ultronimus the other day about different mechanics in Gundam games where, like, in GBO2 you have to like kind of hone in with your funnels and attack like in a way that's like locked on, whereas in previous Gundam games like the Gundam Versus series, you just hit a button and like
yeah,
funnels
they
would go out
launch.
and just automatically attack. So I would love to see like a version of funnels where you have some of that direct control that you have in GBO2, but that it still is a little bit more automatic. Like, maybe you could, depending on the direction you're facing, you have like a longer auto targeting range. I find it hard to talk about this without sort of showing you a visual of how I would design it in Unity. Is like I would almost have like an attack radius that's moved slightly forward so that you can target things in your focal range more than you can target things behind you, but you still have like automatic targeting within that radius.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like, it would be cool if there would be once you launch funnels, and it could be whatever game, maybe you hold down a button, like a trigger button, that would then make it to where the look stick then controls that, but you could still shoot, with your character just in case or activate a shield or something,
Yeah.
but also independently control the funnels. They need to figure that out because that would be fun.
Yeah, because I think that GBO2 kind of it doesn't feel like you're using funnels because you have to switch weapons to the funnels, and then so you're not
Oh,
allowed to
yeah.
use a beam rifle or anything while you're controlling the funnels, and then it's like it almost just feels like a homing missile. It doesn't feel like you're controlling these with your mind.
Well, you just came up with something that just helped me come up with something. It seems like it would be neat to, when you make a game, sometimes focus on what is the interesting element of this, the mechanic. It would be
Hmm.
neat if they tried to approach a later UC Gundam game where everything has funnels and make it where they can come up with a gameplay mechanic that you are controlling funnels though as you're fighting, like as if the funnel system is independent on the controller from the rest of your that would be fun if they, yeah, came up with
Yeah,
something like that.
fun and challenging. I think that
Yeah,
like
challenging that.
it
Yeah.
would it would encourage people to think twice about whether they want to play a new type character because it's like, oh man, like I don't know if I can handle that much multitasking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just realized I forgot to bring up the screen share anyway here, where I've
Oh.
got, yeah. So you sent me this screenshot of the collector's edition, all of the pre-order bonuses that are available for Gundam Breaker 4, which I think the elephant in the room is just the title, right? Because it seems to me that Bandai is ignoring New Gundam Breaker.
Yeah.
They're basically saying like, okay, message received, you guys didn't like it, we're just gonna continue with Gundam Breaker.
Wasn't that supposed to be like the first US released Gundam game, the New Gundam Breaker? Did the other ones come out in US?
I don't think so. I mean,
yeah, because I know for like the PlayStation 4, I had to switch regions to buy it.
Oh, really?
Like Singapore or something.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I bought a physical copy, so I was like, but
well,
I bought it online.
Speaking of physical, so that's another thing. It's weird nowadays where we see it seems like the industry's heading to have this physical special edition. But it almost explains what I was just saying, where this game is really just marketed to Gunpla fans.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily marketed to gamers. So by having a physical release that has a Gunpla, you're pretty much doing what that audience would want.
Yeah, I mean,
that does look sick.
It's pretty sweet. I guess it doesn't say whether is it a high grade? Probably a high grade. I can't imagine
a high grade. Yeah,
I can't imagine they would go master grade for a promo piece.
Oh yeah, that would be cool though. But not that I care for that color scheme, but being out of universe, that's just a really cool concept.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. It kind of gives me the same vibes as like the MLRS GPO2 with like the missile racks on the back.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think that this is kind of the route that people are going to want to go, to kind of keep physical formats alive is, I mentioned this, I think last week when we were talking about like instruction manuals and like, if you are going to do a physical version, there has to be something special about it. It can't just be a jewel case and a CD.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because even for as much as I used to love collecting physical, actually the last physical game I bought was Sekiro on Xbox One, and I think it was just because I think I was able to trade the last of what I had in. Like I was like, oh, I'll just pay for it this way. But I've just gotten to the point where even though I understand that issue of physical going away and then we don't own stuff, whatever, the discs that come out anyway are just to download. It's just an activation to download something. So
yeah,
the only reason to have physical would just be if you like to have the box, which I appreciate. But I'm just so digital minded now. I look for everything to be digital. Like
yeah.
So I got Link's Awakening, the remake on Switch recently.
Oh yeah, I love that remake. It's fun
because I love the original. The original Link's Awakening was actually my real first Zelda I went through.
Oh, nice.
On Game Boy, and so this has been fun to play. And originally though, I was going to buy it physical because it's so much cheaper to buy it physical than digitally. But then I found a website selling a code cheaper. Because it was like, I'd rather the convenience of just downloading it and playing it.
Yeah, I think I own it digitally as well. But
it looked great, by the way, for being on the Switch compared to a PS5. I mean, the art style, the art direction, amazing.
It's really cool, and it had one of those unique things, because it's like 2.5D, right? So I remember seeing like how the characters actually look wonky if you were to see them from any other angle, because like they're arched upwards, like because when you're looking at them top down, you have to be able to see Link's face, but as he's moving around, he's like, he has to move on a 2D plane. So like everything in the game is like slightly tilted back to accommodate the view.
Dude, I love that. It reminds me of when we were talking about Symphony of the Night and they had to figure out how to do it a side scroller. So they just got the 3D. Like when a game wants to be made a certain way and the developers know to use a trick for it to exist, that's what makes I think a game sometimes like good on its own organically.
Yeah. And it's all about like capturing that vision. Like you said, the art direction, the way that game was crafted. It's like, it's all about that. The art director's vision for what a Link's Awakening remake can and should be, but also features something that's heavily featured in Gundam Breaker 4, which is customization. I don't know if you've gotten to Dampe's No? So, yeah, there's the element that they added to the Link's Awakening, remake that is a dungeon creator. So you
Oh, I
can
heard about that,
yeah, you
yeah.
build your own dungeon and play through it. So, like and I think that goes back to what you were saying about, with Tears of the Kingdom and, Roblox and Minecraft, like, gamers are wanting to kind of curate their own experiences within a world that has systems and rules and mechanics that you can understand. So,
Yeah,
um,
even just the other day, actually, when I went into my son's room, he was playing with his friend on Discord, Roblox, but they were playing a custom game they made because now they do game dev stuff. It's crazy. And that doesn't mean like these kids are super smart, even though I'm sure they are. It's more of modern technology has allowed people with creative expression that they want to get out to like make a game.
yeah.
And it always goes back to this thing. I think I've said it before where when I was a little kid, I got a bunch of cardboard and I cut like a box, looked like a TV, and then I made Ninja Turtles that were on sticks so then I could move them in as if I was playing a game. Because I think that was when the arcade game first came out.
That's
And I was like,
hilarious.
oh my
So you
God.
made like an analog video
Yeah.
game. Which, I mean, isn't that what the Labo was supposed to be? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That it just didn't do too much,
yeah.
from what I understand. Neat concept, just didn't do much.
But yeah, so that's and then of course there's tons of other exciting gaming news. They're bringing the Battlefront collection to Switch, which I'm excited
Oh
about.
yeah.
So
That's pretty
I'm
neat.
gonna be happy to dust off the old Switch and start playing on that again. So
Yeah,
this is
the
great.
Battlefront thing surprised me, but doesn't that mean then there's gonna be an influx of people playing this game online? Just because so many people have a Switch and it's Star Wars? That just breathes new life into, like, something that yeah, the later ones are better because 'cause they're more complex in a way. I mean, but the those original Battlefront games have simple systems, but more systems that are
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And even with the new Battlefront 2 being polished and kind of fixed after its initial release, I still go back to the classic one.
Yeah. Did you
And
ever play the ones that came out on PSP?
no, I didn't.
They were fun because they had their own, like, scenario missions. I think there was, like, one was called Renegade. I think there was, like, 2 of them,
Oh, that's
but they
cool.
still allowed you to fly from the ground up into the cruiser and you get out, like, it still did all that, but it was
That's so
PSP.
cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my nostalgia bone is officially tickled. And so yeah, the Switch is
Sounded
gonna be
wrong, but I agree. Yeah, no.
um
But the other thing, I did
Elden
so
Ring
didn't
DLC or what?
yeah, Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think they announced that Elden Ring is coming to Switch. Is that I might have missed that, but I heard something.
I think that is planned.
Yeah,
Which
like, I think
I don't
they
know
made
how
a
well that's
mistake.
gonna do because,
Well,
it's such a graphically demanding game,
yes,
but
exactly. And so I wonder if maybe that's what they've been working on for so long and why the DLC took so long, but I'm just glad that that DLC comes out in June
yeah.
because, like, Dragon's Dogma is coming out soon, and I know I'm gonna wanna play that, and I started, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink.
Oh, how is that?
It's it reminds me of kind of the Gundam Breaker thing where
Yeah.
you're really just mashing buttons at the end of the day, and it's kinda grindy. That's just a Japanese thing, a super Japanese
They
thing,
they
isn't it?
they love gotchas and they love
Yeah.
grinding.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I beat Metroid Dread recently. It's so sometimes it's like I don't wanna jump into too many games if I have others to finish, so
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, going back to the whole dad thing, as you get older, you tend to be a little bit more discretionary about, like, how you wanna spend
spend
your time. I
yeah.
definitely don't commit I don't overcommit to, like, any games that I don't think are going to be interesting to me, so
Or I try to get a game that, like, I can play it in a setting where I'm with the family, like, I got Like a Dragon on Xbox because 1, it's crossplay. I
yep.
love that Xbox is doing that. You buy it once, you play it in 2 places. I wish Sony did that with Helldivers too, but whatever. It's weird how these companies are, like, almost there, but not.
Almost. Well,
But
yeah, I mean, I wish it was that way for, like, SD Gundam G Generation Genesis,
yeah,
because it's like I bought the Vita version and the PS4 version. Now they do have cross saves,
yeah.
so
At
that's
least they
kinda
have that.
cool, but you still have
Yeah.
to buy 2
2
games, so
copies. And I think that's why I've been playing the Switch more recently because then I'll go sit in the living room with my wife or wherever people are hanging out. So I'll just, bring the game with me and just chill and play. So
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, a lot of fun gaming news, and I think that obviously Gundam fans are hyped about this.
Yeah.
So stop saying that developers don't listen to you, because and stop saying
They
that they're
sure do.
lazy, because clearly they message received,
Yeah, a
they're
multi-platform Gundam Breaker 4. Yeah. That was everyone's wish list.
yeah, I'm
Like,
pretty sure
top of
that
the
like
wish
when we did that poll, it was probably last year, we were like, hey, what would be like your ideal Gundam
Oh,
game? Everyone was just like
Gundam
Gundam
Breaker.
Breaker 3 remaster or Gundam Breaker
Oh,
4.
yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I'm happy.
But speaking of Gundam games and Gundam experiences,
Oh, yeah.
this popped up on the old Twitter feed, and then our friend and supporter Zionic Shadow brought it to my attention. Another lost abandonware tabletop Gundam game, which looks pretty interesting. Obviously, there's a bit of I would say some strange translations, like Close Fight. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was, yeah, that's kind of a weird title for it. But I wanted to do some research on it and see if it was something that was worth looking into. I have a couple of different Gundam board games, and kind of getting at the heart of what we were talking about with Gundam Breaker, and what we've sort of talked about with in terms of Gundam video games, like what makes a Gundam game feel like a Gundam game. And that's kind of what I posed to the chat in the poll, is like, question of the day, what makes a Gundam game a Gundam game? And so we've talked about that in the past when it comes to video games, and I think that obviously there's a variety of opinions about that, but like we haven't really broached that subject as far as a tabletop game goes, because some people prefer more of an RPG, some people prefer more of like a, miniature war game type of game. As far as I can tell, this looks to be more like a miniature war game, but
That's cool.
without miniatures.
Oh,
As
yeah.
this is the most interesting thing about it. Is so, looking through some of these images, we've got the cover art, which looks cool.
Yeah, I like that art.
It looks like it was based on this tank simulation game, Sukuda, which
Oh, okay.
I guess it's like an adaptation of that. And we've got
That's cool.
these what look to be like unit sheets, probably to track your mobile suits and such. Looks like there's some maps associated here, and then just tons and tons of these little pop out tokens of things, and it looks like maps of like city areas. So very like low res stuff. It doesn't look like it's
But for a tabletop game, especially when it comes to me and my knowledge of that stuff, this seems like it'd be more down my alley in terms of like, yeah, we're seeing a map. There's a battlefield. We are managing these pieces and taking turns. Yeah.
yeah, like more definitely more of a war game.
Yeah.
I wish that it had miniatures though, like instead of these little pop out. It looks like, is that an Akai on that
Yeah, it
card
looks
there?
weird. Although we could probably get either you 3D print them or, on eBay, they sell all those,
Oh yeah,
miniature
exactly.
things sometimes and then, yeah, make your own.
And I think lots of people have tried to capture the essence of like a Gundam tabletop game using these types of like miniature war game rules. Obviously there's Gundam Skirmish, which is a free system out there. You can play it with Gunpla. There was an official Gundam miniatures game. I think it was called like Battle Universe or something. Battle something, because let's face it,
Yeah.
every Gundam game is battle.
Battle
Battle Operation, Battle
Yeah.
Chronicle, Battle Alliance. But yeah, I mean, people have been trying to sort of capture this system of Gundam and create a Gundam game in tabletop form, obviously since 1987, probably before that. But I don't know. It's something about it just doesn't quite scratch the itch. You know what I mean?
Well, for me, specifically, when I looked at those little cards you were showing, like the little pieces, because it seemed to show like different weapon loadouts, or so for me to really be immersed would be that any action or move I'm taking is almost managing myself as a mobile suit. Like if I feel like that is the game where I'm managing, okay, this weapon I need to use, or no, I need to switch to this weapon because this type of mobile suit does this. And, like if I feel like I'm making choices and decisions that I would be making in the world, that's what would make it feel like a tabletop. Now, if it was just like Hero Clicks where you just have two and then you're like spinning numbers and being like, okay, I have the bigger number, I hit you, that would feel less, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one of the things that I think gets brought up in GBO2, it definitely gets brought up in D&D a lot, is the idea of, when it comes to unit stats, is the idea of like effective hit points. So like, for instance, on paper, a Gundam might have like 18,000 hit points or something like that. But because of its resistance to certain damage types, or maybe it has, a lower percentage chance of being hit, that's when you can incorporate things like effective HP. Well, its effective HP is actually closer to like 24,000 because all of damage done by these types of weapons is reduced by half. I've always wanted to kind of build out a calculator. This will probably be something, spoiler alert, maybe a Patreon perk for next month for the tabletop supporters. But I really do want to make some kind of universal calculator for effective HP, because I think that is one of the sort of balancing levers that you can use. One of the things that I think is kind of lame about some of these tabletop games is like, you're never going to get like a Zaku that can actually go toe to toe with a Gundam, right? Because even if, like, if it's balanced, then it doesn't feel natural because the Gundam is supposed to be able to beat the Zaku, right? But if it's not balanced, then, there's no point in ever picking a Zaku because you're always going to get murked. So one of the things like I appreciate about Heroescape, for instance, is you have like certain squads that have, maybe they're not super powerful, but maybe they have an ability or something that raises their effective HP by a lot. There was a particular like samurai squad that doesn't deal. I think it's they have an ability called Counter Strike, and so they actually don't deal a lot of damage on attacks. But as a defensive maneuver, what happens is so the way that it works is like you roll attack dice versus their defense dice, and so like if there are more defensive successes than offensive successes, then all of that damage is dealt back to the attacker. So they're an inexpensive piece, but I think that like if I were to create something like the Black Tri-Stars, I would give them that ability. So it's like you're fighting against 3 DOMs. The DOMs themselves don't do a lot of damage on attack, but when they're defending, they actually have the ability to deal damage back to you. So it kind of raises their abilities without making it feel unbalanced, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or what about the idea of you roll a dice for a mobile suit and then you roll a dice for the pilot? And maybe it depends on your pilot's ability or experience that they could be a Zaku 2 that takes out a Gundam. Like, let's say you have a badass pilot in a Zaku 2, but you have like a newbie in an RX-78 2.
And I think that's a huge
stats.
That's a huge part of Gundam games, is that I don't think that any of them really account for the pilot as much as maybe some of the G generation games, like, because obviously
the 3DS, even though it's more of like you either choose or you don't, but still in battle you get more as a new type.
That's true.
Or different. Yeah. You know what? I think that's the first, unless you can think of one, that's the first and only one that really makes it where the pilot makes the game different.
I think so. I mean, there's really not a lot of that. I guess, technically you can look at like 0081 or like Zeonic Front, but like with some of those, like Zeonic Front, you can choose a pilot, but their mobile suits are chosen for them. So it's not really like, you don't have a whole lot of flexibility in terms of that. But like with Crossfire and 0081, you can select a particular pilot and pair them with a mobile suit that you think will, either complement or help balance them out. So there is some of that, I think, in Gundam video games. I don't think there's any of that in Gundam tabletop games, and maybe that's what there needs to be to kind of just create that distinctive Gundam-ness.
To make it where the pilot is always consistent, but not necessarily the mobile suit. It could be where a mobile suit is destroyed in battle, but you still get options to like roll a dice. Where does the escape pod land, for instance? Or maybe if you have enough units or friendlies near you, you are able to be safe, or something like that.
Yeah, and that's another part of that, like the effective HP, right? So like, for instance, if I were to create a Gundam tabletop game, and I think that you can do this in Gundam 5e, depending on like character choices and class choices and stuff, but like a typical GM might not be particularly effective. But paired with like a Gundam that has like inspiring presence, all of a sudden, like either it gets damage resistance or it gets like a buff to its HP or something like that. And so then that's where you can kind of get that balancing act of like increasing a plain old GM is enhanced by the squad that it's composed with.
Yeah, you know what? That even reminds me, it would be neat if like if your pilot character is a new type and someone else you're going up against is a new type, it limits your backtracking movement because the idea is you're being pulled in. It's almost like that feeling, like Hathaway has, but you're experiencing it on the battlefield because you can't escape as much as you want. You can little by little hoping your friends come in, but it's almost like you're being pulled in essentially.
That's a pretty awesome mechanical way of expressing a story element in Gundam. See, and so that kind of raises the question to me, like, for the poll, I haven't checked it recently, but last I checked, it was like 60% of you guys said customization is like the most important thing in a Gundam game, and I just have to say shame on you, chat, because to me, I'm like, when has customization ever been like important in a Gundam series? Why would it be important in a Gundam game?
That's where that delineation between a Gunpla enthusiast and a Gundam, like for me, I would just say what makes a Gundam game for me is I feel like I'm being immersed in the Gundam world. That's why Gundam Breaker doesn't do it for me, because that's not a world. That's just some random virtual.
What are you talking about? You're in high school. You're in this competition.
Well,
there's all these waifus around that.
Oh, okay. Okay, you're
you sold me.
No, but
I see what you're saying.
Like, it's like for me, I'm really attached to the world it comes from. So that's why I like UC and the world, and then like hearing the music, learning about pilots, and then the mature themes, the stories they go through. But when I'm playing, part of that immersion is feeling like I am in a robot.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some of that, and you want the mechanics to reflect the world that you're trying to be immersed in. So it's like I've seen some other Gundam tabletops that incorporate the idea of like fuel into like, you can only operate for this limited time using this mobile suit because you only have this much fuel. And I'm like, at least in Universal Century, they never talk about like a Gundam running. They talk about ammunition.
Exactly. I was about to say that would be the better mechanic to introduce.
Yeah, like a limited resource.
I can bring this beam rifle into battle, but I have to be careful with how I'm using it because I can run out soon. That might affect some other energy parts.
And I think that was one of the things that you and I both really enjoyed about 0081 is the fact that like you really are restricted to just the ammo in your gun. It's not like GBO2 where you reload, or like Gundam Versus where you just like, oh, wait 30 seconds and your weapon will charge up again. I really appreciate that, where it's like once you're out, you're out. Like
it's pretty good.
But so I don't know. I don't think that this is a tabletop game that I'm going to pick up personally.
No, and why is that? Just
well, I mean, I think it would be probably impossible to find at this point. No, I mean, I'm sure that I could probably find a copy somewhere. I mean, I got that Zeta Gundam board game secondhand. And it was actually in really good condition, and it actually has miniatures in it. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Zeta Gundam board game does a better job of capturing story elements than like just this kind of miniature war game, which, I think it can be restricting because obviously the only thing that you can do in the Zeta board game is fight at grips. Like that's it. The entire game is based around like recreate the Battle of Grips. 1 or 2 players play as Titans and 2 players play as Ayug, which is kind of sorry, I don't think you can see it on stream, but there is a cat there that's
she's like grabbing my arm to pet her.
But yeah, and as a Xeon enthusiast, I'm a little offended that they chose 2 Titans players and 2 Ayug players instead of doing like 1 and 1, but whatever.
But but it is interesting because like you were saying at the beginning, it seems like this is just really a skin.
Exactly.
So
and
it's
I think
like
that's the same thing that you see with Gundam video games though, right?
Yeah. It's like, this company came up with a cool, like war game. And then it's like, oh, let's throw the Gundam IP on it, which is not a bad thing. That could get then people into these games that never would have played them. But
Yeah.
I think then for people that really like Gundam, that's where then it could be like, well, this doesn't really scratch that itch.
And I think you saw the same thing with like Gun Evo, where it's like, you know, we're gonna reskin a, you know, an Overwatch hero shooter with Gundam, and you know, hopefully draw people in. But it's interesting to see which ones succeed, like which Gundam games succeed as reskins of something else, and which ones fail. As far as I can tell, I don't think that there's ever been a hit Gundam board game.
No, yeah, because I mean, yeah, I can't even think of. I mean, even in general, I don't hear too much about board games unless I'm looking for them,
Yeah.
or I'm already really into something like other like Elden Ring or Bloodborne. I remember when they like announced those miniature games.
And Steamforged, they do a lot of those video game adaptations, like the Souls board game and everything. But I have to say, it's like, I don't know, how well do they really capture the experience of being in that game versus how many people are just buying them because they want the miniatures. That's like
and that's why I was thinking the overhead on stuff like that must be low, because I just feel like, is there really a market for this? You know, and maybe there is. Or it's just low overhead.
Yeah, something like that. So it's interesting to think about. I've definitely seen some good looking board game adaptations of different IPs and some creative stuff. I think that there was a Metal Gear Solid board game that came out that had like a very unique sort of stealth system, where like neat. You know, the camera, like the cameras and the guards had like patrol routes and things like that, where it's like as turns would progress, like, you know, you kind of have to time your movements and things. But you know,
which sounds like the video game play, you know?
Yeah.
And it reminds me, I was playing this Five Nights at Freddy's board game with my son, and we're playing it, and we're like, it's like teaching you to do things that have nothing really to do with Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like you use the dice to move around to just pick up items, and then once you get the items, like you win. And it's if I can't explain things in terms of the IP to explain the game, then it's probably not that immersive. You know?
Yeah. So the quest continues. Maybe we need to craft our own version of a Gundam tabletop that really does capture those story elements. Because I can't even imagine how would you handle something like funnels in a board game.
Yeah, they would probably be their own pieces that have random, like you roll a dice for a certain funnel system, and then depending on what you land on, like they move out a certain way, like a certain pattern. Maybe there's randomized patterns based on where you're targeting. Yeah, it's almost like you have to account for, okay, how many spaces forward is this enemy? And if I was to unleash them, where would they randomly then sit on the board but facing them? And then depending on the distance, that might give the enemy some wiggle room to defend.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. So like the fact that it would have a timed mechanic to it. And then of course, like, you know, is it a PvP game, or is it you know, like, is there a board game AI that you can use? I've seen some very interesting attempts to make like a board game AI, either using, you know, you shuffle a deck of cards, and like you every turn that the enemies get, you flip a card and you get a random set of actions, or it's like controlled by dice. But
well, how many board games do you play that is PvE versus PvP? Is it split?
So I tend to prefer like a PvE game to a PvP game, but there aren't very many that handle it very well.
Okay.
I will say that like when HeroClix started dropping their like boss characters, that was pretty sweet. So like I used to have him behind me on the shelf, but I have like the Galactus figure, which was like a convention exclusive, and Galactus actually has a countdown timer click, right? So you have to defeat Galactus in 20 turns or else he wins. And so everyone assembles their teams, and then you can like, as the turns click down, and then there's like scheduled events. So like as he hits a certain turn, he might do like a table wide attack, things like that. So there's That's cool neat. Ways of doing it. I think that one's a little predictable, because obviously if you've memorized the attack patterns and stuff, like, and then of course at the end of the day you still have to, like, for the player that's kind of making the decision about, like, okay, if Galactus has 3 different players' pieces in range, which one is he going to attack? Right? And it's like, well, sorry, little brother, but Galactus is attacking you this turn. Like, you know, how do you mitigate that like, oh, well, one player is going to pick on the other players kind of thing. So
that's pretty neat. I do feel like there's more that can be done in that area of board games, because again, like growing up, we played the simple stuff like Sorry. But like, even though I'm into that sort of stuff, a lot of it has to do with the setup. But then even if you've set up and understood what you're doing, sometimes when I've played, they weren't like immersive.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I really feel like I'm playing a game in this world, rather than I'm just learning how to use these mechanics of this board game. So
yeah, that's an unfortunate side effect, I think, of, you know, like, maybe I've heard that, I haven't played personally, but I've heard that like Gloomhaven is a really awesome, like, immersive PvE.
I hear that too.
So I think that kind of Gloomhaven experience, but Gundam would probably be good.
Did I lose you for a second?
What? Oh, no, I think we're still
probably
here.
Internet thing.
But yeah, I mean, if you really want an immersive Gundam board game, I think that if there was a version of Perfection that you are playing as Shiro Amada trying to reboot the EZ8 before before
I haven't played Perfection.
Oh, really? Oh, that's it's that game. It's like a puzzle where you have a timer and you have to put all these pieces that are different shapes into their slots, and if you don't finish it in the time limit, it pops and throws all the pieces everywhere.
Oh, that sounds familiar. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm surprised that that you haven't played that.
I have to check that out. Huh.
But speaking of things that make me angry,
here we go.
Yeah, I would be remiss if we didn't address some Twitter drama. So I am gonna show some screenshots from that. You know, this is actually one of the occasions that Ollie Barter and I agreed, and so he was responding to a tweet that had this little diagram on it, like identifying all of these different, you know, mecha types and subgenres and stuff. And I think that we both agree, and I think you probably agree with this too, where it's like it kind of misses the point of mecha, you know, these like different classifications. So like,
yeah,
obviously, you know, you've got your realistic mecha, which is BattleTech, Chrome Hound, Steel Battalion. Okay, well then how is that different from real robot? If you have realistic and then real robot, is a real robot not realistic?
Yeah, I mean, near future sounds like something that would be real robot.
Neil Blomkamp movies, that's funny. Which I would not say that Neil Blomkamp movies have sleek modern mecha. Like if you think about like Chappie.
Yeah, he purposely makes things look
junky,
worn, and old and used. Like, that's
Zimmert, which I guess is like the Maschinen Kriegers. That's
okay.
Yeah.
The weird kind of almost look like World War One.
Exactly. It's like retro future type stuff.
Yeah.
Utilitarian, which is, you know, Votom's front mission, unrealistic but grounded in modern tech, because it has a camo paint job. Obviously everyone loves to bash on super robots, Voltron, Gaio Gaigar.
Super robot though is a valid label for something.
You think so?
If it's just a giant robot that's doing fantasy stuff all the time, then I would say, okay, that's a label.
Yeah, but then, like, you know, what do you call Zeta turning pink and bouncing lasers off of it? Like, I think that the Zeta Gundam's a super robot.
Yeah, see?
That's where a lot of these classifications, I think, are missing the point.
Because then it's like everyone could have their own interpretation of what that is. Because if I was to refute that thing about Zeta, I would be like, well, that's in the world of Gundam, which is this, you know, and then you can't win.
So, I mean, when I look at a chart like this, and I said as much on Twitter as I was like, I guarantee you that if you ask the creators of any of these franchises, you know, what they would classify their mecha as, they would be like, I didn't classify it as anything. It's my robot. Like, this is it. It's a mech. Um, these types of classifications are made specifically by a type of fan that wants to denigrate another type of mech.
True.
And then I would say that obviously some of these categories aren't hard and fast. Like, I would say that there's versions of Gundam that are not necessarily real robot, like they're more super robots, or maybe there's, you know, shoot, even the like the Lodo from Gundam Unicorn.
Oh yeah,
that is probably closer to something out of BattleTech or
even the
a
worker,
utilitarian, mobile worker.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that categorizing an entire franchise around these sort of arbitrary terms and classifications, it's just one of those things where like everyone likes to kind of put things in a box and say like, this is what this is and that's why I don't like it, or this is why my thing is better than your thing, and
yeah, like Democrat, Republican, or whatever. Like it's the same thing. I'm labeling this so I can hate it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
talk bad about it. Yeah.
And I think it I think that you're probably doing yourself a disservice by having that mentality. I was probably guilty of it as well. I definitely fell into that category of like, oh no, I prefer more realistic robots like Gundam to, things that are like super robots. But at the end of the day, I think it's more, how should I phrase this? I think that it's more productive to just say the thing that you like instead of trying to classify it. So it's like, for instance, I always say like, I'm not a big anime fan. I don't like anime. I watch Gundam. I maybe have watched like some Cowboy Bebop, a couple of shonen things. But just because I'm a Gundam fan, I have a Gundam YouTube channel, doesn't mean that I'm an anime fan.
Yeah, I'm not an anime fan. I just like good shows.
Good
movies. Well, you know what? That even another thing. So there is, and I've heard of this guy's name, and I forgot it. Struckman, maybe he's like a movie online YouTuber, movie critic. He's really popular, and apparently he decided to take a position where he's only going to review movies he likes. And then people were like mad, and it's like, actually, that guy's pretty smart. He's doing his mind a good service to always think positive, talk about the things he likes, always spend your time on the things you like.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I forget what I was watching. It was another podcast where they were talking about Steve Guttenberg, the actor, like how his Instagram's just all positive. Everything he posts is just about being positive, about positive interactions. And they're like, yeah, this is like where people need to get to online. Start utilizing communication online to be positive, bring forth positive things. And I think it's people don't necessarily mean to be negative, but I think it's a mental trap, just like not feeling like working out. I'll eat this sugar. I'll post negative because I get a quick dopamine hit, but then people get stuck in it.
Yeah, it is definitely a positive feedback loop where the more you do it, the more likely you are to do it.
And sometimes even that idea of faking positivity has good results, because over time you'll realize, oh, acting this way actually has better results. Now I enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, and I think you can train your mind to greater appreciate the things that you say you appreciate. So for instance, this is one of the things that I think I talked about, I harped on it a lot during, everything with Witch from Mercury last year, is I was like, if you can't defend the things that you like without bashing something that you don't like, then how much do you really like the thing that you say you claim to like? You know what I mean? So like, man, I just, how many times can I fit like into a sentence? Sounds like I'm like
5 times.
Just like, so, for instance, as a Gundam fan, I can tell you the things that I love about Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam without referencing some other material that it's like, at least it's not this, or I prefer this because it's not that. If you can't say that you prefer something because of the inherent qualities that it has, then you're actually missing out on the things that you could be appreciating about the thing that you enjoy.
Yeah, and Alan Mitchell is saying something in the chat I think is good to always keep in mind. Giving things labels or categories can also be useful when trying to describe something new. And I think that I like that. It's a good way to introduce a label, is a good grounding to get into something, but it's not good as a comparative means to try to defend something. Because like, for instance, I like music a whole lot, and I think labels work really good for when I am trying to talk to someone because it reminds
Except for
me
all
of
of the 70 million subgenres of metal that
I
exist.
know, that's what's crazy. But it's one of those things where, like, yeah, like black metal. I really like black metal, but okay, so here it is. Like music evokes certain emotions and feelings, experiences that are sometimes things you can't describe or tell someone, wow, this feels like this. So when you listen to it, you're going to feel this. A lot of
Yeah.
times you have to use some sort of more arbitrary category that's more like, well, it's within this zone of. So, like black metal for me, I get feelings when I listen to black metal that I don't know how to describe or explain. So that's why I say I like black metal. But sometimes I have to be like, well, I like black metal, but I'm not some sort of nationalist because sometimes those get, or I'm not like a Nazi. It's like
Yeah.
I like the atmospheric unknown but like menacing feeling I get sometimes. Whereas death metal is more like brutal or gory fields, which that's fine, but I like the atmospheric nature of black metal. And
Yeah.
I think it sometimes happens like with you see Gundam. I don't know how to explain to someone the feeling I get. So sometimes you have to use labels or comparisons to other media. So sometimes I say it's like Star Wars, but more mature. But it's
Fair. I think
yeah.
I think when you're comparing it to a specific other reference like that, like
Yeah.
when you say like Gundam is like Star Wars, that's not the same as saying Gundam is like, a post retro sci-fi
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
that type of odd classification
As if
because
everyone universally knows what that means.
right, because it can mean
Yeah.
it can mean different things to different people, and B, you can always have, especially in case of music, you have artists that they might be distinctly like, a hardcore band, but then they drop an acoustic song, and it's like, well, does that acoustic song now still convey all of the same things that their pop punk hardcore tunes like
I
to
love I love this discussion. It reminds me of like Offspring and AFI. As they
yeah,
came out with new music, it wasn't what I'd label it as. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because it could be a band. You can say the feeling you like is, oh, this band.
exactly.
But for me, it's like, well, I like the sound and I don't like later Offspring sound.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Neither do I. I think
yeah.
that, and that's people can grow and change over time, and their music will change and things like that. But yeah, I think that you can even have that same type of, I definitely prefer early Metallica to to later
Oh,
Metallica,
yeah. That's another good example. Yeah.
but I would not necessarily classify either, you know, the most recent album or the band itself as one type of music or another. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think yeah, you do have a good point about music classifications work in terms of like on the level of a song
Yeah.
or an album if you have like a concept album that is all one genre. But I think
I
even
remember
oh go ahead.
no, I remember Last FM. I used to use that all the time. Do you remember Last FM?
Oh yeah.
And my favorite at that time, so this was in my 20s, like my favorite album of all time, Painkiller by Judas Priest. Favorite song of all time was Painkiller. So I would always search songs like Painkiller. I went my whole life trying to find that, and it was really hard. But then recently I found, because I heard this band that started in the late 80s, and I forgot their name off the top of my head, but they sound like Judas Priest. And I realized, oh, it's because that drummer left that band to Judas Priest and made the Painkiller album. So it's like, oh, so it's that drummer. I like the drumming like Travis. I forget his name. I forget it. But that again, like sometimes you can kind of distill down what you're trying to tell people.
I
And
love that.
yeah,
I love that because, and I think again, it goes back to that idea of it is giving you more appreciation for the things that you actually do enjoy because you can say like it is specifically the rhythm from Painkiller. It wasn't the melodies. It wasn't the vocal. It was specifically the drumming.
drumming.
And
And the
so
drumming informed how then the guitars would have to play or the bass would have to play because it has to meet that sort of machine gun sound drumming. Yeah, and so that's the way it took me a decade or more, or actually 20 years to kind of distill down what makes the painkiller sound. And then I wonder, that makes for better conversation. So I hope like we get to do that with robots eventually, where it's like, how can we distill a robot down?
Exactly.
Because
so like imagine if that was your, to kind of turn your example on its head. Imagine if you said like, I like painkiller because it doesn't sound like this.
that doesn't help.
It reminds me of how people say like when you're giving someone instructions, don't tell them what not to do. Like for a ski instructor, they're like, don't tell them to avoid the trees, because if you tell them to avoid the trees, they're going to be focusing on the trees and they're going to hit the tree.
Yeah,
you tell them to stay on the
really
path.
good point.
So you give that positive instruction. And so, yeah, I think that's a perfect example of that, is focusing on that positive aspect actually brought you to it faster. It probably would have been 40 years for you to
but that's good. The skiing thing is like a good quick way to kind of explain how I'm trying to then explain something to someone. But but this gets to where like I want to be able to get to a point where we could easily explain what Gundam is to someone else without having to, like, because it seems like if you try to have a conversation about what Gundam is, it kind of devolves into labels. It's like, well, what could we come up with to help people that don't know Gundam without it being about labels and stuff? That's where I came up with the Star Wars thing, because I'm like, okay,
it's
a lot of people in the West know Star Wars. If I add it's more mature, I'm not saying being less mature is bad. It's just if you're ready for a Star Wars that is a little more mature in its content, Gundam would be for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair description of it, because where Star Wars follows like the traditional Joseph Campbell hero's journey, like the mythological story, Gundam kind of goes off the rails with that a little bit. It doesn't follow the hero's journey the same way.
It sort of highlights the wrongdoings that actually happen in our society, and makes you think about that stuff. So that's where that mature element comes in.
So I think where we should start is, and shout out to Unusualist Pyro for creating this. He fixed this chart for us. So here we have, this is the cool robot from Battletech, from Chromehound Steel Battalion, simple plotting weapons. We have the cool robot from Ghost in the Shell. And then there's actually the cool robot from Machine and Krieger, cool robot from Votoms. So you get the idea.
Love it.
I mean, that's just the perfect answer to any type of
it's almost like speaking about what we were just talking about for 10 minutes done in a simple screen.
Sometimes the meme does more magic than the hardcore analysis, but no, I think that that's definitely the way to talk about it. And it's like, I can say without a doubt, there are certain things that I like about Gundam that, whether it's the fact that the silhouettes are immediately recognizable. I think that's a huge, it's a foundation of graphic design, right? Like the idea that you can identify something by its silhouette. I think that's a very powerful thing that you see in Gundam that and I'm trying not to say that you don't see in other mecha, but no, but I think that there's a lot to say about why I like Gundam, but I don't necessarily like Evangelion or other.
Yeah, and I've learned that too. As more anime I've jumped into, I just kind of realized, well, that doesn't mean I like this, I guess. Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I really wanted to address today. I think we probably hammered out some points. I think it's always cool to see these sort of abandoned Gundam games and like Gundam media that are just lost from the 80s. So if you do stumble upon any of that stuff, send it my way. I'm happy to either, like I said, I'm trying to translate the Gundam RPG Advanced Edition, because I know there was a group on Reddit that was trying to translate Senki, and I don't think that they ever finished, but
0081?
Well, Gundam Senki, the first Gundam RPG.
Oh, okay.
But and that's part of the problem with a lot of Gundam fandom stuff, is that it's all very segmented. You have people doing different work, different places, and so it's like, man, just imagine if everyone knew that these games existed, then maybe we could actually pool our resources and get them translated.
Yeah.
But thank you for I always value your expertise on video games and your insight into the way the industry works. And so
always love talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew that we had to touch on Gundam Breaker at least a little bit, but you know, hopefully we didn't bore you guys too much with that. I know we're probably going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow as well,
because people out there love Gundam Breaker. So
they do.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have to do something where we like you know, break down the top Gundam Breaker 3 builds ahead of Gundam Breaker 4 and see if they'll actually still hold up. Because it's not like they've introduced a whole lot of new series. I mean, there's probably going to be some Witch from Mercury ads and some IBO
Witch from
stuff.
Mercury, maybe some battle log stuff.
Yeah, maybe they'll throw in the La Gundam from Metaverse and things like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for keeping the chat lively. And again, I'm ashamed of you guys for the results of that poll. We need to do better. No, I'm
well,
kidding.
that really tells us what Gundam fans are looking for.
Yeah, you know, I think that's interesting because
that they're Gunpla first. It almost seems like that. Gundam is almost Gunpla first in a lot of ways.
I think it is. And, you know, a lot of people tend to either disagree with it or take issue with that. But maybe that's, you know, it's just the nature of being a Gundam
if it allows it to thrive, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, exactly. So am I forgetting anything?
No, we did good. I think we even added some extra topics.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, chat, for watching. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. If you haven't check out I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but you did release a short earlier with your thoughts on Gundam Breaker with a little bit more nuance and flair than we did on the live. So yeah, go check that out if you haven't, and we will see you tomorrow.
Yep, see y'all.
Cheers.